Hello, this is Dr. Flight, and looking forward to having a video discussion here and talk about the uniqueness of nonprofit marketing. And in particular, we'll talk about some unique features that nonprofit organizations have. Some of these unique features are benefits that help nonprofits actually operate within the context of government and the private sector. So there are some key benefits that nonprofits can take advantage of. At the same time, there are some key challenges that also exist for nonprofits as well. And these items both contribute to add to the uniqueness then of nonprofit organizations, and specifically some unique challenges that nonprofits have in their marketing functions. So enjoy the lecture and please again reach out to me if you have any questions. Thanks. Alrighty, as we begin here, what we want to do is focus some time and energy thinking about some benefits that nonprofits can take advantage of, and these are things that would set them apart from and make them unique when compared to for-profit organizations. And in fact, sometimes an organization has a choice to be either a nonprofit or a for-profit, and in this case, these are some reasons why we would want to encourage a nonprofit entity to take place. So one of the big aspects here or incentives is tax implications when it comes to filing taxes and what taxes are owed and paid to the government for being able to operate as a nonprofit. So benefits then include, from this perspective, exemptions from federal, state, and local income taxes. Local property taxes are minimized, and also unemployment insurance as well. There are also other benefits that can be offered nonprofits from the government, like lower postal rates and also relief from certain anti-competitive Business Act practices. So the Robinson-Packman Act is a regulatory component that guards against anti-competitive behavior, and so nonprofits have some legal relief in that respect. And finally, when we think about what the government can benefit from or provide a benefit for, again, from a tax perspective, are what we call write-offs. And so when people donate to a not-for-profit, the individual who makes the donation may be able to use that as a tax incentive for their own personal taxes. So there again is another opportunity to take advantage of, maybe some lowered taxes or fewer taxes overall. Now, when we think about the organization of nonprofits, we often think of like what sectors or what industries these organizations fall into. So with for-profit organizations, there's something called the NIACS code and some other coding typologies where we code and we organize businesses by the type of industry they're in. And for nonprofits, there is a similar coding categorizing schema that's used as well. So nonprofits are typically categorized into one of 10 different predefined designations. And again, this helps from a legal perspective. If you're applying for like a 501c3 status, or you're looking to be a nonprofit organization, you need to declare and identify what category you're in. So there are 10 different categories listed here. You can take a look at those. Pause the video anytime if you need to take a look at some of these things. Okay, so this actually adds also to the uniqueness of the nonprofit focus as well. Other elements that differentiate nonprofits from each other, that create uniqueness among nonprofits have to do with how they compete with each other, funding sources, and so forth. So the first one here deals with the extent and the use of volunteers. So what may differentiate or make one nonprofit unique from another is the extent to which they use volunteers as labor. There's been a push today to use fewer and fewer volunteers for laborers within nonprofits, and in fact there's more of a trend to hire and pay individuals to function and work in a non-for-profit. But that would distinguish some from others in terms of volunteerism. Level of competition between nonprofits. So sometimes nonprofits compete against each other. Other times they work and collaborate with each other. You can think of universities and schools as very often kind of independent, and the work that one school does maybe does not impact the work another school does so much. But with religious nonprofits, there may be very, very much competition. A lot of times you see churches and synagogues and mosques in relative close proximity to each other. And as a result, you see people, being courted by each organization separately in a more vigorous way. So that would be a second differentiator. Sources of funding is how organizations earn operating income or generate operating income. Some organizations use personal donations as their key source. Some sell products and services. So some require private donations. Some get grants. So there's all kinds of different funding sources of funding, and different organizations use these funding sources very differently. And then finally, the last thing that separates or kind of distinguishes firms from each other, or nonprofits from each other, is what the nonprofits seek to accomplish as their goal or mission. Some nonprofits want you to change physically or psychologically. Others want you to do something and have a new behavior of some type. Some nonprofits simply want you to believe or take on an attitude. And so the type of change that we want people to make, or the type of activities we want individuals to engage in, vary significantly. So that's another differentiator within the nonprofit sector. All right, so other unique aspects of nonprofits focus mostly here on different challenges, and there's going to be 8 different challenges that nonprofits face that for-profits may not face necessarily. And again, this creates uniqueness among nonprofits in the nonprofit world. Number 1 here, the target audience definition. A lot of times it's difficult to identify who the client is, and that client definition would be maybe a market definition for us in marketing. We want to think about who is being served and how their needs are being served. If you consider that some people it might be some people, a person might be the actual client who's receiving the services of the nonprofit, or in this case, you see a cute little puppy. The puppy may be a client, and we're serving the puppy's needs, and that would be the target audience, interestingly enough, in terms of how we're serving the actual the recipient of our goods. The Red Cross, however, uses that they may be serving individuals who are part of a hurricane or a flood or a fire or something along those lines. So target audience definition is difficult. And incidentally, those people who are involved with a natural disaster cannot be identified before the disaster begins. It's not something that you can predict necessarily, like where a tornado is going to hit, to know who you're going to be serving. So target audience definition is a challenge. Revenue sources such as donors that give to nonprofits, charitable giving is often done to benefit a cause and not the nonprofit. So this is actually an interesting element too. If you're focused your target audience on revenue generation, a key challenge here within this area is that individuals often donate not to a charity but to a cause, and so identifying those folks is challenging in and of itself. All right, so the second one here that we'll talk about is the fact that when we're dealing with nonprofits, the goal is often to encourage or elaborate on some sacrifice that requires a psychological change. So what we're asking people to do is to give up some cultural norm or abandon a stereotype. Which is a challenge to do. Here's an example where a psychological change and a physical change was given up, but a psychological change, the President's Council on Physical Fitness always wants you to give up some sedentary lifestyle or some, the council wants you to be active and wants to instill good healthy habits. This is clearly very difficult to do when we're asking people to make a psychological change. We're asking them to change a mindset, and very often these are very tough to do. So sometimes they're not so successful in doing so. To elaborate a little bit more on this, we think about sacrifices as potential costs. So a key idea in marketing is that individuals need to give up something in order to receive the benefits of a product or a service. So firms produce a product or a service and customers are expected to give up something in order to receive those. One of the challenges is the customer needs to feel like the benefits they're getting outweigh the costs they're giving up. So in some of the sacrifices or costs that we look at for nonprofits, they're not necessarily dollars, right? They're not necessarily like money that you're giving up, but there are other costs. Economic costs are, a possibility, right? So there are economic costs that need to be considered. But then also think about these others, though, sacrifices of old ideas. So you have to give up an old idea in order to maybe adopt a new idea, and that's what we want consumers to do for nonprofits. We also may have to give up some old behavior or pattern of behavior in order to adopt a new one. So that's a physical thing that we're giving up. So psychological costs and then physical costs, giving up a behavior or routine can be extremely difficult to do. And then the fourth area here, which is unique here specifically to nonprofits, is sacrifices of time and energy. So it may not be we want you to give up money, we might want you to give up time and your energy and your effort in order to help our nonprofit. Okay, so this idea of sacrifice is very different for a nonprofit than for a profit-seeking organization. All right, number three, third element here, the product is often focused on something that's like an idea or is something invisible. So we actually call this tangibility or non-tangibility, where you can't hold and feel a product. So unlike traditional products and services, ideas need to be sold, but that requires a psychological change in order for somebody to adopt a new idea. So the adoption of an idea first happens internally. The recipient thinks about what's going on, and then they develop feelings towards that idea. And then they accept the idea, and then they believe and follow upon new held beliefs. So there's actually a process here that's happening within the person, which is dealing with adopting, accepting an idea as opposed to an actual tangible product. So yeah, that's a big issue. Another issue is participant apathy. So these are going to be 8 different unique challenges. This is the 4th one, participant apathy. Oftentimes, target audiences are indifferent towards the mission or the service that's being provided, and quite frankly, they don't know they need it until they're told they need it. So in marketing, we specifically call these unsought products. It's a product or a service that the consumer doesn't really know they need until they're provided with an example or they're provided with evidence that they need it. Life insurance is a classic example of an unsought product. So as a result, nonprofits focus on this. This is a big issue for nonprofits because a lot of times people don't realize they need the nonprofit or they need the services of it, and they need to be educated and reminded often that the mission of the nonprofit is something that's worth having. So earlier you saw this picture right down below here where there's this cute little dog. Clearly, every dog looks sad when they're behind a cage, so this is a sad little puppy. It reminded you of a lost or unwanted pet, and that made you sad. So now you're thinking about what you can do to help this pet, right? This dog. And 5 minutes ago, this wasn't even on your mind. You weren't even thinking about it. So what I've done is I've created inside of you some sympathy or some feeling to overcome the apathy that you might have had before. I've brought to your attention a need, and now you recognize there's a need, and maybe internally you want to do something to solve that need. So overcoming this apathy for unsought products is a challenge for sure. All right, number 5. We need to very often expect, or we want our clients to make huge changes. So we call these 180-degree changes, when you're changing direction from one way going into another way. We want you to stop smoking. We don't want you to slow down. We don't want you to ease off. We want you to stop. So that's going from a behavior to a non-behavior, which is a big change for most people engaged in this. Advocates for non-abortions, like non-abortion activists, I guess, abortion should be illegal, not partially illegal, completely illegal. It's like a 100%, kind of commitment to the cause is what we want. Drunk driving should never be acceptable. Not sometimes, never. So like, is it okay to drink and drive sometimes? No, not at all. So that requires a 100% avoidance of that task. Some religious organizations say you need to, if you're going to adopt our religion, you adopt our religion, and by adopting our religion, you will exclude all others. You won't be any other religion. You won't follow another religion. You'll follow ours. So we're not going to accept a mix or a grouping of religions. It's all or nothing. All right, so yeah, absolutely challenges here that we have. Number 6, the innovation and the change within nonprofits is oftentimes very slow and very difficult to modify sometimes. So, like when you go to give blood at the Red Cross, it's pretty much the same pattern. It's pretty much the same procedure. It's, pretty much non-changing in terms of how that's done. The adaptation and innovation within nonprofits is often very slow. Consider the example of a symphony who's playing a piece by an artist or whatever. We have Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. If you're going to listen to Beethoven's Fifth, you typically are going to play it and listen to the complete work if you go to it. Problem is, maybe not everybody wants to listen to the whole thing. Maybe they only want to listen to 1 or 2 movements, and then they want to listen to 1 or 2 movements from somebody else, and so on. So, what if some of the movements are boring or the audience fall asleep? Can the conductor change the delivery or change it. Well, no, I mean, it's hard to. I mean, there are notes on the page, and the notes are supposed to be played, and they're supposed to be played a certain way, and to deviate from that may not be acceptable. 12-step programs. You got to follow 12 steps. Can you do 11 steps? Can you do 5? Can you do the steps out of order? I don't know. But the general idea is we follow the steps in order and we're not modifying them. Um, Counterexample, so where this is being changed to some extent, if you examine and study contemporary Christian churches in America, many of them are eschewing and leaving and not following strict liturgical order. So many of the modern contemporary places of worship have what they call auditoriums, where you used to have a church and a sanctuary. They're calling them auditoriums now. We have things called praise bands instead of the traditional choir. Those praise bands have electric guitars. There's food and drink, and the dress code's relaxed, and lots of visual and audio techniques used to deliver the message. So there's videos and light effects and things like that. So counterintuitive, there are some nonprofits that are managing their audience a little bit differently and becoming more adaptable to what's going on. Cool. So coming up next, number 7, a challenge that many nonprofits face is that many of the nonprofits clients have difficulties doing things for themselves or managing themselves. Many may be unable to communicate or lack communication skills. So if a client lacks communication skills, traditional marketing techniques may be difficult to use. Clients may also experience physical disabilities or disorders, mental processing deficiencies as well. So for these, again, if you think of traditional marketing executions like TV ads, radio ads, print media, technologies that require like the internet and computers and things like that, those all may be very difficult for clients of a nonprofit to actually use and be able to receive. So marketing wise, we have to overcome some of these challenges, unique challenges that are there. All right, finally, the 8th element here, ideas are typically difficult to market using marketing tools. So we had this earlier where we talked about the products are different and we're asking people to change because we're asking them to accept an idea. Well, an idea is something that can be sold. It can be something that's marketed, but again, it's not the same as a tangible product or even a service that like getting a haircut. Or having your oil changed at a mechanic or something along those ideas. So ideas in general, which we're asking people to adopt in as a result of a nonprofit, and the intersect between an idea and actually marketing it is problematic. So like in marketing, we want to put a price on what we're selling and what we're offering. How do you put a price on an idea? What is the cost of delivery for an idea? How does it cost you money? And if you're going to run an organization, you have to understand what your costs are in order for you to stay in business. You can't see an idea. You can't demonstrate an idea. How do you sell it in that case? Right? Where, how, and when will the service or the idea be delivered? So the whole notion of the intangibility of the idea and then the marketability of an idea is a whole different ballgame when we think of it from a marketing perspective and how traditional marketing techniques may or may not work. Okay, so we covered a lot of material in this video. First, we began by talking about how the nonprofit sector is different from a legal perspective, from a taxation perspective. There are 10 different classifications that designate where or what a nonprofit can do. And also, nonprofits behave differently among each other in how they use volunteers in different resources and things like that. Then we went into a series of discussions or a series of elements, talked about how there are unique challenges for nonprofits, especially in marketing. So defining the target audience, the sacrifices of psychological change, the nonprofits products that are intangible or invisible, which also relates to number 8 as well. Apathy that the clients often have towards change. Nonprofits that want to create or incite big change. They need to really motivate consumers to change a lot. Nonprofits' lack of differentiation in their delivery of their product. So the product that they deliver often doesn't change over a long period of time. So innovation is something that is a needed thing for non-for-profits. Number 7, clients often lack resources to be reached from a communication standpoint. And then finally, traditional marketing tools are often ineffective when using non-traditional products like ideas. So number 3 and number 8 somewhat relate to each other. They're very similar. But in general, we have 8 challenges here then for marketing nonprofits that create a lot of uniqueness for nonprofits and so forth. So this is a summary. Please, again, let me know if you have any questions. And I hope you enjoyed this short discussion on the uniqueness of nonprofits and marketing.